Hey guys, I'm Dog God Frog Log, and thanks for jumping back into the pond. Our next guy is going to be on Ra, and he's more of a control play style. He restores 1 health to all friendlies in target column, and a lot of his cards combo off of his heals. The first card up would be Dying Wish. Kill a friendly unit and draw cards equal to its attack. Now you're not going to see this too much because you often don't want to kill one of your units. Unless they're really weak, and that's only 1 or 2 cards, and there's better cards to give you that kind of draw. But if you do run it, it is good to trigger some afterlife effects, like maybe Bastet or Circuit to get a poisonous on somebody. But it's not too high value. Next up is Fist of the Gods. Stun an enemy unit and draw a card. Now this is one of Ra's best deck thins. The stun's really good at 1 mana especially, and you also draw a card off of it. So it's just a really good card all the way around. Effectively puts you at 23 in your deck, lets you get your combo pieces a little bit quicker, while also winning a trade or two. Next up is Gift of the Nile. Give a friendly unit Afterlife, spawn a 1/1 version of this unit. Now the Afterlife and the respawn is really nice, but it does only make a 1/1, so you want to combo this with other Afterlife cards, or something like maybe a Chieftain where you can spawn it and buff it up into something big really quickly. Next up is Sunder, and Sunder's really good. 2 damage for 1, so it breaks out of that baseline of 1 for 1. Pretty self-explanatory. You play it, you deal 2. But it's pretty good. You're going to use it pretty often. You're going to see it pretty often. Next up is Voice of Eternity. Discover a card with Afterlife at 1 mana. It's very cheap, and it can pull out some pretty good cards. You can get like Sylvanas off of it, for example. So it's not a bad card. Might not want to go too heavy on it, might just run a 1-of, but it's definitely something that you could play. Next up is Cataclysm. Stun enemy units in a 2x2 area. 2x2, a little square, 4 tiles that you can hit with it. And it's not too bad. It is a stun, it is appropriately priced. It's just hard to sometimes get it off in a group of enemies because there might be, one in the top lane, one in the bottom lane, and that split is kind of hard to work around with Cataclysm. Probably better off just running Fist of the Gods and stunning that specific unit that you want to get. Next up is Meditation, and you won't see this too much. You already heal with your leader ability. You already have heals on other cards, so Meditation's often a bit overkill, but if you really need the heals for a certain combo or for your Sobek or something, you might run it. Next up is Pharaoh's Health. Give your Summoning Stone plus 3 health. This counts as healing. The reason it says this counts as healing is you can use it on a full hit point Summoning Stone to give it 28 hit points and trigger a Sobek or something. Outside of using it to trigger Sobek or something, or a Thoth or something on a full HP Summoning Stone, it's not really that good. You get your heals elsewhere, you get them more effectively. It kind of just takes up a deck slot. You won't see this too often in arena or rank. Next up is Sacrifice. Kill a friendly unit and deal damage equal to its health to an enemy unit. It's not a bad card, it gives you a little extra oomph, but it does take one of your units out, so if anything you want to trigger it on one of your Afterlife units. And you have to keep in mind it's not equal to its damage like Projection is, it's equal to its health. So it's hard to go in and trade and then sacrifice because you might only have a hit point or 2 left. It's not a bad card, it's not a great card. Next up is Scarab's Blessing. Give a friendly unit Afterlife Resurrect. Now this could be pretty good. Put some resilience on one of your cards, and you can use it with like Bastet to make extra cats. She'll come back, she'll drop 3 cats on the board, and the next time they kill her, boom, 6 kitties. So it's pretty good. I like it. Might run it fairly often in ranked. Definitely run it some in arena. Next up is Sobek, and you're gonna want this guy. He's your bread and butter 2-drop. Whenever a friendly is healed, gain +1/+1. The only thing that's a little bit tricky about him is getting some damage off. Hopefully they play like a Mercury or something that does a little bit of tower damage, and then you're able to play Sobek, start healing him, and he can get really big really quick. And once you're in there trading with units, it's hard to stop them. It's hard for them to stop you from buffing him. Next up is Bastet. Now, Bastet's a pretty good card, another bread and butter for Ra. Afterlife spawn 3 cats and adjacent tiles, which is really good. You go in, you trade, you get some kitties for some extra damage. It helps you get across the board when they might have ranged units or other threats that are kind of holding you back. And you still have the cats to trade in with. Next up is Canopic Jar. Whenever a friendly is healed, deal the amount healed as damage to the enemy summoning stone. You won't see this one too much. It's a 0/3. It's weak to silence. It's weak to Aegean Outcast. It really just takes your whole turn away when you play it. And without doing a bunch of massive heals and quickly, it's not that good. It does combo with Khepri, but you probably won't be using it. You probably won't see it that much. Next up is Celestial Armor. Give your summoning stone immune damage until the start of your next turn. It costs 3. It does give you immunity. You won't run into it too much, but if you do use it, it is good for a stall. Maybe you have an answer next turn, like a Thoth Khepri combo, but you can't pull it off this turn. That's when you would drop Celestial Armor just to stall for a little bit. But keep in mind, they're still going to be dropping threats. So oftentimes it's better just to play like a Focus Blast or Magma Blast or something and just answer the board rather than going so passive. Next up is Magma Slam, 3 for 3, right on that baseline that we keep talking about of 1 for 1 on the damage. And it's pretty good, pretty self-explanatory. Kills a Guardian, kills a Bacchus, kills other little threats that you want to get off the board before they get too big. Next up is Sir Cat. Poison a random enemy unit, they die at the end of your next turn. She's pretty good, and she makes trades awkward for your opponent. That poison can really mess them up, but do keep in mind that the poison still lets them move the turn after. So don't put your units in a position to where they get poisoned, but they can still come in and get value out of that card. It's really effective when they're stuck out of the way and poisoned, and they just have to watch their guy die. Next up is Solar Sanctum. At the start of your turn, heal all friendly units next to your summoning stone for 1. Again, you won't see this one that often. You already have a heal built into your leader ability. It's 2 for 1 on a column. It's cheap, it's effective. Solar Sanctum's a little bit overkill, and it's conditional too. You need to be right there around your tower, and that can make things a little bit awkward. You're going to be wanting to go at them, you're going to be wanting to trade with them, and Solar Sanctum doesn't really enable that, so you won't see it too often. Ward, draw 2 cards for 3, very fairly priced. You will see it pretty often, pretty self-explanatory. 2 cards, 3 mana, it's pretty good. Definitely don't go overboard on them in Arena, but 1, 2, probably not bad to grab. On her, your opponent cannot use War Cries. Now you're going to want on her, especially in Arena. He's amazing. He's basically a silence to every single war cry they have in their hands, and champs like Bologna, most of their effects are war cries. Terra, Cupid, Mercury, I mean, on her takes them all off the board. It makes it just really hard for them to get value out of a lot of cards. They have to take on her out and quick, and if you can keep them safe, it's normally your game. Next up is Appeasement. Kill a friendly unit and reduce the cost of your cards in hand by 1. At first glance, this doesn't seem too bad, but it costs 4 mana, so in order for you to get a lot of value out of it, you're going to have 4 or 5 cards in your hand just to break even, just to get a little value. You're going to want to kill something cheap too, like a Bastet's Cat, so that you don't lose a lot of points playing it. So a good way to look at it is it's actually a cost of 5. 4 in mana, and at least a 1/1 unit, so it's very hard without a huge hand to get value out of Appeasement. You won't really see anyone running this, you won't see it that often, it's just a little bit overpriced right now. Next up is Focus Blast. Deal 3 damage to an enemy, then heal a friendly for 3. You're going to see this one a bit. It's a nice little combo, good damage to take out a threat, and then a bit of synergy to buff your stuff up. It's pretty good. 4's a little bit pricey, but it does have the heal on it, so you're going to see it, you're going to want to use it. Definitely pick it up in Arena and Ranked. Next up is Khepri. Now Khepri is no value at all unless you're playing maybe Oppak or another Ra with a bunch of Bastet cats, unless you have combo pieces. When Thoth's out on the board, when Sobek's out on the board, anything like that, you're going to get a massive amount of value from Khepri, because he hits everything and then he heals everything of yours. He's just a huge combo piece. So don't throw him out on an empty board. Make sure you set up for him a little bit. Last Breath. You'll run into this one pretty often. It helps a lot in passive games where both players are kind of playing towards the back. Poison up to 2 random enemy units. They die at the start of your next turn. You do want to be careful if they have structures out like Ganesh's pillars. Try to take those off the board and then poison so that you're getting high value. Make sure that you do stay out of the way of their units. You know, have it set up, stun them or something so they can't get full value out of their units while they're poisoned. They do have the turn after to play and move with them. Recruiter. Now, Recruiter's a lot of fun. Best mustache in the game. And he's a gamble. He's a gamble. You reach into their deck, you pull something out, so it thins their deck a little bit, takes them a little bit closer to fatigue damage. If you're lucky, you're pulling out a bomb, like maybe you still blown his Fire Giant. If you're unlucky, maybe you still Nuwa's Hyena. You know, you have to be... It's a gamble, but at 4, it's pretty fairly priced for what it can do. Ritual Tribute, you're going to want to be running this pretty often. Ra has a lot of afterlife effects like Surcat, Bastet, and being able to throw those cards out, have them die, get their afterlife, get some trades in, and then spawn them again immediately is really good. If you have Sobek, maybe he dies early on, you didn't get any value, boom, he's back as a 3-5. Now it's easier to trade with him, now it's easier to heal with him, makes him into a much bigger threat. You do have to be careful from the silence because the +2/+2 is a buff, so they can be silenced right out of that +2/+2. But it's a good card, definitely run it in Arena, definitely run it in Ranked. If you do run it in Arena, make sure you have the gods to pick it up first. You don't want to run it without having those gods, so maybe don't grab it right away. Next up is Book of Thoth. Discover an Egyptian spell and add a copy of it to your hand. Little bit confusing because at first you see it and you're like, 5 mana for a spell, why don't I just take the spell instead of Thoth? Thoth adds 2 copies to your hand. So you could pull a double Annihilation, double Execute, but you could also miss and maybe pull a double Cataclysm or a double Meditation. But it's pretty fairly priced. Maybe you just run a 1-up. It's a lot better in Arena where it's hard to draft exactly what you need and Thoth can just come in and make up for it. Next up is Execute. Do I even need to explain it? 5 mana, kill any creature. It's really good. You're going to run 2 in Ranked. You're going to run as many as you can get in Arena. Well, probably not more than 3. But Execute is great. Any sort of threat that's not immune to spells, you just take it straight off the board. It answers so much. Really nice price for it. Really good to use. Geb. Has a war cry, give a friendly +0/+3 and remove any crowd control effects. This counts as healing. Geb's pretty good for triggering some of your units. Even if they're at full health, it counts as a heal. You can use it to buff something up and win a trade. He's not too strong, but he does have a big booty. So he can get in there and take a bit of damage, soak up a bit of threat. Not too bad at all. Nisa Bread and Butter. Whenever a friendly is healed, gain global range until the end of your turn. Now this is really, really, really good. She's a 4/4 archer, which kills a lot, trades very safely with a lot of units, and you're able to keep her on the back of your board. And if you, let's say your summoning stone's taking like 3-4 damage, you can just sit there, heal your stone, and hit anything you want with Neith. She's a much, much better stone guardian, and you're gonna want to run 2 of her, definitely. Thoth. Whenever a friendly is healed, deal 2 damage to all enemy units on the same row as Thoth. It'll hit them in front of them, it'll hit them behind them, anything on the same row. Thoth's great. We were talking earlier about Khepri being a combo piece. This is what he really combos with. 2 damage to everything. You can drop a Khepri and it's like 10. It doesn't hit the tower, but it will kill just about everything else. He's ranged, so you have a little bit of value. A little bit of safety trading with some of the other melee units, putting in a little bit of extra work. Pretty good card overall. You're definitely going to want to run 2 with this guy. Anubis. Deal 3 damage and root all enemies in target area. Anubis is good. The way his Warcry works is it's a straight line out in front of him, and whatever target you pick, it's a range of 3 tiles. So you can use this to clip any clumped units that are sitting together in the back, like maybe there's 2 Stone Guardians or something, a Bacchus, a Guardian, and Anubis will answer that very easily. 6 mana for a 3/4, a little bit low on the stats, but that's because his Warcry is so powerful. The root's also going to lock him in play, so you can use that to kind of position yourself a little bit better. Annihilation, you gotta have it. You gotta have it. It's Ra's best card. Deal 4 damage to all enemies. It will hit the tower, so you can use it to set up lethal, and it'll just annihilate them. Great card. Make sure you get one. Next up is Isis. Give all other friendly units Afterlife Resurrect. Now Isis is a really powerful card, but she is very expensive, so you're not going to be able to play units the turn that you play her. She is a 4/4 archer, which trades pretty well, but at this point in the game, it's not going to be too hard for them to kill her on a pretty even board. Make sure that you get some units out, you curve into Isis nicely, or you're just not going to get that much value from her. And she doesn't give herself Resurrect, so keep that in mind. Next up is Osiris. Reduce cost by 1 for every friendly that dies while this card is in your hand. Don't run it. Don't use it. It's a very, very bad card at the moment. It costs 8, so you need at least 4 units to die for it to be a 4/4. At that point, for 4 mana, you could just play an Oogway. He'd be stronger than Osiris the very next turn. It's just not good. There's no good way to get to his value. Don't use it. Don't run it in rank. Don't run it in casual. Don't run it in arena. You do not want Osiris. Book of the Dead. Spawn 3 random gods from either graveyard under your control. Book of the Dead is pretty interesting. 9 mana gets you 3 gods. Sometimes you'll miss and you'll get a bunch of low value gods, but if you're playing somebody against Zeus, you can easily pull out like Hades, Ares. It's a gamble, but it's normally a pretty good gamble. If you have a bunch of Afterlife cards too, you can bring those back and recycle their effects. Sometimes people run it, sometimes they don't. It's 50-50. It's really up to you. Depends on just how god heavy you think everything's going to be. Definitely not a bad card though. But as far as crafting goes, get Annihilation first, and then probably Isis, because she can win easily on the right board state. Thanks for tuning in for this guide. Make sure you tune in every day on Twitch.